From courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast, episode number 427. Andrew with you once again. I'm joined as always by my good friend Derek, aka D for 3.
I'm happy to be here again. I have to ask you to kick off the show, which session did you enjoy more? The session we had playing NBA Live 98 using the 1986 Celtics versus the 1987 Lakers, or our session on NBA Live 2004 co-op again using the 90s All-Stars versus the CPU 80s All-Stars?
Ooh, that's a tough question, quite frankly, because those was a couple of great games to play. I might say 98, and you know why? You know why? Because we were able to kind of replicate a classic play with those 86 Celtics going against the 87 Lakers. It was so much fun to play with that patch, that, there we go, going old school, I'm using the word patch, that mod, that roster mod that Lutz made back in the day, the Champs rosters. 98 is a game that I did enjoy it back in the day, but I didn't play it as much as other games that came out around about that same time, so it's always fun to revisit that one for me. I'm going to go with 98, but that 2004 session, especially with that camera mod, what a great couple of sessions with those classic games.
Well, before we discuss the camera mod and how that kind of changed my experience with NBA Live 2004, did you just say you didn't play a lot of NBA Live 98 back in the day? I remember us talking about it in the past, and I thought you had spent a lot of time on it. Maybe it was more modding rather than playing, but I always thought that NBA Live 98 was one of your favorite, if not your favorite, in the series.
Actually, no, I didn't have a PC that would run it properly. In fact, I put out a Way Back Wednesday a little while back talking about how I tried to get the demo to run on that 486 DX 266 megahertz system that we had at the time, and how it ran at not even a frame per second, quite frankly. I couldn't actually run it. I bought it later after we got after our family got a better PC, and I completed my collection. I collected from the start, as you can see. I played a lot more of NBA Live 2000 than I did NBA Live 98, and I was probably still playing a lot of 96 PC updated for the latest season, because that's what I could run on that ancient and rapidly aging even more 486. But Live 98 is a game that I've played it a fair bit, but back in the day, when it was new, I didn't get to play it very much.
It makes me want to play the game with you even more, because we spent a ton of time on it when it was the current game. Back in the day, my brother and I spent so much time playing NBA Live 98 for the PC, and we both did a little bit of modding on it and whatnot. But yeah, that roster for Live 98 definitely adds a whole new experience to playing that game. The Lutz roster, it's so for people who don't know, he, along with, who was it, ran the NLSC?
That was Tim and Brian were our three founders.
So it was Lutz, Tim, and Brian. So he was one of the founders and managers, I would say, of the NLSC back in the day. And he was also a roster maker. And these rosters that he made for NBA Live 98 are absolutely excellent. He has Champs roster, which is, greatest championship teams of all time up to that point. And then an all-time teams roster where each team has 15 of the best players who played for the franchise up to that point on those teams. It's weird using the Lakers and Kobe not being there, because it's Live 98, so at that point he's not one of the greatest Lakers of all time. So you go through the roster, it's like, wait, where's Kobe?
Exactly.
He shouldn't be there. But the rosters are excellent. The game plays really well with them, and it definitely added to that experience that we had with the game.
But that highlight that we went for, we weren't mic'd up for the game. We're not mic'd up that often. We do need to be mic'd up more often. That'd be fun. But I remembered in Live 98 that when you have your back to the basket and you haven't put the ball on the floor yet, you can do a ball fake with the crossover button and holding it up in the air and doing that ball fake. And I did that with Bill Walton and remembered, this reminds me of that classic play where he held it up and then flipped it over, that pass to Larry Bird. And this is the synergy we have now, Derek, the chemistry we have having played co-op with so many games over the past year, I should say, that you knew exactly. I mean, of course, being the Celtics fan you are and the basketball historian that you are, you knew what I was going for as well. But as soon as you saw that, you must have known what I was trying to do, and you went for it too. And we got it to work out, and it was fun.
Yeah, well, it's funny because it's not just about our chemistry playing co-op, but like you said, it is that basketball knowledge piece by both of us, knowing that play where Larry Bird posts up Bill Walton and then immediately cuts around him baseline, and Walton has that little one-handed ball fake and he flips it over his shoulder to Bird, who then does a layup. And when I saw you switch to Walton and move over to the block, if you notice and you look at the highlight, I'm moving over there with Bird because I know what you're thinking. And like Andrew said, we weren't on the phone, we weren't in the text chat talking about this or anything like that. We just both at the same time were like, we're going to do that Walton Bird play in NBA Live 98, and we're going to try to make it perfect. And the first time we did it, we got it pretty good. I went to that side of the floor, you went to the post. I threw the pass in, you did the ball fake, I cut around you, and you dropped it down to me, and I did a layup. So how cool was that? And I have uploaded that gameplay video of NBA Live 98 to the NLSC YouTube so people can check that out.
Indeed. And we were talking in between quarters over DMs, and you noted, that was the wrong side of the floor. So then we started setting it up again, and we tried it a few times in that game, right. that ball fake. Yeah.
Do you know how many times I've seen that highlight in my life? And it was part of like the Celtics documentaries too, like the Bird documentaries or just regular Celtics documentaries. And whenever they're talking about Walton's stint with the Celtics and the amazing chemistry he had with the Celtics immediately out of the gate, they show that play. So I've seen it so many different times, so I know which side of the floor it's operated on, and executed on and whatnot. But I did want to get to the Live 2004 camera mod. So if people remember correctly, NBA Live 2004 has the press box camera, but with the press box camera, even though it's functional and it's somewhat similar to broadcast, it's very high up over the action. It hovers over the court. So it's not really like a true broadcast camera. It almost feels like similar to Skybox.
Yes.
In the new NBA 2Ks.
It's a bit tilted. The angle's not quite right.
Tilted, right. And so you can't have it too zoomed, and then when you zoom it way out, players almost look like ants. They're pretty small on the court, and it's not my favorite camera, let's put it that way. So I was always hoping to find a camera mod for NBA Live 2004 that allowed us to play a more traditional broadcast camera. And Modman ZZZ had a camera mod made for NBA Live 2004, and it turns the press box camera into a real broadcast camera. So I booted this up, and I played a couple games with my brother, and we're playing on this new camera view, and we're like, this changes the experience so much. And it was just more enjoyable to execute moves, to throw it down, to do the triple threat moves and whatnot, and the ball fakes, and everything just looks cooler on that view, and it feels so functional. I don't think I could ever go back now to using Pressbox regularly now that I have that broadcast camera. And I think you had the same feeling when you started, when we played that co-op game, where you were like, wow, this really does feel like a different experience. And I thought that was cool to share with you as well.
You notice it straight away that how much he has corrected the angle of that broadcast camera, that press cam, and I loved it. I haven't played Live 2004 with too many mods outside my 96 roster for a long time now. We've usually revisited it with either that 96 roster for a game there, as we did a few weeks back, or just kind of a vanilla experience, which is still fun because it's a great game. But there are a lot of mods like that I haven't checked out as much. And yeah, this has been the other great thing about going back and playing these games, is digging out these mods. And that's a fairly new mod. That's from just a few years back, if I recall correctly. But playing with these mods that we haven't experienced before, or these mods that we haven't played with for years, maybe ever, is keeping these retro basketball gaming experiences even fresher, even more exciting.
Well, it's funny. Isn't it funny how just a camera view can really make you enjoy an experience that much more? because it's how you view the action and, how much more of the floor you can see, or, is it like real life, like what you see on TV and stuff like that. Like, I was talking with Nate actually about it, NBA Live 2001 legend. We were talking over text about it. So if you remember correctly, with NBA Live 2002, there is a side camera, but it is incredibly zoomed in. And even when you move the slider to zoom it out as far as you possibly can, it's still way too close to the action. And, you're not seeing enough of the floor, and it's not really like a true broadcast camera. So unfortunately, NBA Live 2002 wasn't released for the PC. So it's not like I can get the PC version, download a PC mod, a camera mod, and hit the ground running. So that's pretty unfortunate with Live 2002, because I do think that I would enjoy NBA Live 2002 more if we could have a camera view that was a little bit more zoomed out.
It makes such a difference. And I think this is one of the things that people forget about modding, especially in the days when, and not to get on my grumpy old high horse here, but with people looking at modding as a form of clout or making money. Back in the day, we made mods to enhance the game. You'd see something about the game you didn't like. Oh, Michael Jordan is missing. He's a roster player. How can we fix the rosters and get them up to date and get Michael Jordan in the game? Boom, done. Oh, I'll share that with other people. Oh, the camera angle is a little bit weird. It's not quite right. It's not quite realistic. Oh, we found out a way how to edit the camera files. Let's fix that up. We found out a way to adjust that angle by changing the values in the file. Great. I'm enjoying this. Others will enjoy that too. Logo updates, and not just big projects, but small updates like that fix something. Or people who found ways to get an NBA Live 08 PC how to re-enable player lock because it was dummied out by default. There was no access to it. But we found the menu file from NBA Live 07, dumping that in there. We were able to access that option again. Workarounds and fixes like that. So important when it comes to modding.
It felt like it used to be a little bit more collaborative in the community.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a problem, let's fix it together.
Exactly.
And I think that's the best part about community. I think that's the best part about any community is, that collaboration, that closeness, and results driven, motives and whatnot, and also the sharing aspect. And I unfortunately, I don't think that's as like what it used to be on the NLSC or in the modding community overall in general. But yeah, great session on NBA Live 2004. Loved using the 90s All-Stars. You and I were both trying to do stuff with Kemp, and we ended up with some pretty nice contact layups, and there was also a nice little rebound and, big two-handed slam. Both of us, I thought, had real nice drives from the perimeter, utilizing the triple threat and freestyle with Jordan, whether it be, palming the ball and holding it behind us and executing a spin move into a jump stop. There's just so many different options. When you're in that triple threat position and you haven't lost your dribble yet. And it felt even better to do it with that new camera mod as well. But yeah, I thought we did a lot of good moves. We pulled out the win on one of the higher difficulty levels, and we'll definitely have to revisit that again sometime.
No doubt. And the 90s and 80s matchup has been such a go-to for us because we love that era of basketball and those names, those great players of that era, and yeah, just being able to put those Legends teams on the floor, those all-decade teams, the Decade All-Stars, whatever you want to call them, it's just so fun, always. I will say, though, that Larry Bird, although it did work for us, kind of got screwed by the officials. He almost fouled out. The officials did not like Larry Bird in that one. But you mentioned the fun we were having with Live 2004, and we were also talking about it off-air as well, that you're kind of changing you have mixed feelings or changing feelings about Live 2003 and Live 2004 as far as balance and quality of gameplay you mentioned. So I thought I'd bring that up on the show so you could expand on those thoughts.
One of the biggest problems with NBA Live 2003, and my brother and I are noticing it more and more the more we get back into it. And I don't think we noticed it as much back in the day, but when you put Live 2003 and Live 2004 side by side, you actually really notice it. I don't know if you notice this, but with Live 2003, when you try to pass it up the court, it is almost always a turnover because your offensive player, so the receiver, instead of either stopping to appropriately catch the ball, or, maneuvering around the defender that's in front of him, in order to catch the ball while the ball is moving. He just like hits a brick wall, which is usually the defender, and the ball goes sailing out of bounds. And the defender is always connected to the offensive player. So you'll get a ton of turnovers that way if you try to pass it up at all. So in Live 2003, that actually really hurts the flow. So you feel like you're always stopping, making sure you can see that the receiver has completely stopped and that a defender isn't near him, and then making a pass. So it hurts fast breaks and it can hurt flow. So that's one thing that we've definitely noticed. Another thing that is tough with NBA Live 2003 is, while I like the fact that there isn't a ton of suction like there is in NBA Live 2004, it is basically impossible to get any chase down block. It is basically impossible to stop anything at the rim if the offensive player is in front of you, or even a lot of times on the side of you. So basically, it's very overpowering when you are going to the rim, or when the computer is going to the rim, where they're both offensively just overpowering. So those are two things that I actually like a little bit better about NBA Live 2004. I think that they did create a better balance with those two issues. Like at NBA Live 2004, if I want to run a fast break, I can pass it up court, and my receiver is going to act most of the time the way he should, catch the ball or catch it while he's moving. And it won't just like constantly be a turnover. And if I want to get a chase down in NBA Live 2004, and I do have a capable shot blocker, let's say it's Alonzo Mourning or something like that, I can, make somebody miss or block a shot if I'm on the side of them or behind them.
No, I absolutely agree with those observations, 100%. Before I get into that, though, speaking of blocks, how about those blocks we had with David Robinson and Shaquille O'Neal? Awesome.
Yeah, the David Robinson one was actually my favorite because it led to a fast break and a penny dunk on the other end. It was all very smooth, and it was the perfect defense to offense play. Shaq did have a nice block in that game as well. But I thought that the action in that game was pretty fun and consistent throughout, the one that we played on Live 2004.
It definitely was. And there's a couple of improvements in 2004 that I really like over 2003, and they both come down to the new, what they called the 10-man freestyle, which was both a motion capture technique they had and also improvements to the artificial intelligence. Now, the downside of that is that you get the suction that you're talking about, that a lot of those two-man animations, those two-man scenarios, do lead to some getting sucked into them. So you will see that, and there's a bit too much physicality. But I do like that there is more physicality compared to 2003. In 2003, it's still kind of like tin cans banging into each other when players collide, whereas you do have those realistic, for the time anyway, collisions in 2004, and you'll go into an animation that is contextually appropriate, and you can bump the ball handler and not just have a foul or force them to lose the ball on a cheap turnover, things like that. As for the AI, you can also see the CPU teammates moving around a little bit more. If you go back to old basketball games, old NBA Live games, they are a lot of fun to play, but one thing that you will notice happen a fair bit, unless you're calling plays constantly, is that there's not a lot of freelance offense, that players will stand around a lot. The CPU opponents will often just pass the ball back and forth. 2001 is pretty bad about this, actually. 2001 in particular, you'll see the CPU players just pass the ball back and forth and waste the 24-second clock and then take a shot wherever the player who ends up with the ball happens to be. And hopefully it's within their range. But with the enhancements to the AI in 10-man freestyle, and also that greater physicality, those contextual animations and whatnot, I don't know, it just started really feeling more like a modern basketball game. 2004, to me, is one of the first games in the NBA Live series that starts to resemble what we'd have today as far as that physicality, play interactions. They did have the problems with getting sucked in. That was less of a problem in 2005 and 2006. They cleaned that up a little bit. And sliders can help. And there's sometimes the mid-air collisions with the default sliders, they force too many adjusted shots. It's pretty hard to, sometimes on the harder difficulty levels, to do power up for a dunk. It'll force that. There was a lot of Kemp layups that should have been Kemp dunks, for example. but I do like those enhancements that 10-man freestyle implemented in 2004.
Well, a couple things. I actually enjoy the gameplay right now on NBA Live 2004 quite a bit more than NBA Live 2006, and I think it's I feel like the player movement overall feels and looks a little bit cleaner on Live 2004. Um, I know that you're a pretty big fan of NBA Live 2006, but that's just kind of my preference right now. As far as those files that you were talking about on NBA Live 2003, I couldn't agree more. The whole thing where my brother and I were talking about this, it almost feels like it still has a little bit of the old cloth in it, where in the older NBA lives where the players just fall to the floor at any hint of contact, or like if you brush up against somebody with turbo, they go flying, or something like that. There's still a little bit of that in NBA Live 2003, and it happens a little bit too often, and it can definitely hurt flow. So another thing with NBA Live 2004, they introduced the Pro Hop. So I think that was a great addition, but I feel like you have to rely on it a little bit too much, especially if you're playing on All-Star or Superstar, because otherwise it's complete brick wall defense basically on the perimeter. So the only way sometimes that you feel like you can actually get to the hoop is by hitting that Pro Hop button. And what it does is it pushes you through the defenders and gives you the opportunity to at least take a shot at the hoop. So Pro Hop, it's a great addition, but I do think that it was a little bit overpowering and something that we had to rely on a little bit too much.
Oh, I agree. And the funny thing is that they added that, and they added sliders in 2004, but didn't add a slider for Pro Hop effectiveness, which didn't come till 2005. So there was no way to adjust it. But yes, it definitely was very overpowered. I did like that you could attempt tip dunks automatically, although at the same time 2005 brought in freestyle air where you could have that greater control over tips or putbacks and whatnot. So that was an improvement in 2005. 2005 is a tremendous game. There's always some debate between 2004 and 06 in our community, but a lot of people split the difference with 2005, and I think that's a pretty good choice as well. I'll also say that 2004, 2005, and 06 have my favorite iteration of the T-meter on the backboard there.
Oh, it works great, doesn't it?
Mm.
And I like the camera view for that as well. The close-up, kind of angled player view. I actually really, really like that. I did want to say, too, though, another thing that hurts NBA Live 2003 is the fact that there is no speed slider. So you're stuck, like you can't change the game speed. So you're stuck playing at that hectic pace, as opposed to NBA Live 2004, where my brother and I turned the game speed down to 50 because it's on 60 by default when you play it on Superstar. So we turned it down to 50, and it definitely makes things feel a little bit more organic, natural, and fun.
I mean, that continues to be the knock on 2003. I know a lot of people have nostalgia for that game, and I do too. And it's not a horrible game. It's a landmark game with freestyle control and whatnot. But it was a bit too frenetic for my tastes. And if nothing else, 2004, with those sliders, you can either have that really fast-paced action or slow it down a bit to the pace of what the NBA was at the time. So it just goes to show what an important addition sliders were. 2K had sliders, I think, at least in 2K3, if not 2K2 and earlier. So to bring them in 2004, that was another case of them. 2K was starting to really build a reputation as a viable alternative, and some people already felt it was a superior game to Live at that time. So for Live to look at what 2K was doing and taking some ideas like that, as they've done with other games throughout the years, was definitely a great move on their part.
No, 100%. And again, I go back though and play NBA Live 2004, and I'll play, ESPN NBA basketball or something like that from 2K. And honestly, I enjoy NBA Live more on the sticks. So I see why I stuck with that back then and why my brothers and I stuck with that, because we, like I've said on other podcasts, we didn't switch to NBA 2K until NBA 2K7. That was our official switching point. Before that, sure, we did play the original NBA 2K and whatnot, and I also played 2K1 and 2K2. But most of our time was spent on NBA Live titles, and I see why that's the case when I go back and I play like NBA Live 2000 and NBA Live 2004 and whatnot.
Well, it goes back to what I've said before: is that a lot of people forget that Live was the gold standard, doing it the best across the board for so many years. Other games brought great ideas to the table, some of which Live adopted, but as far as who was doing it the best, as far as season mode and franchise mode and gameplay mechanics and just the experience, the overall experience, Live was doing it really well for many years there. And it wasn't really till the Xbox 360 generation, the 360 PS3 generation, that they really started to falter.
No, exactly. And, when we realized that NBA Live was kind of done, or when we realized that they weren't going to improve for us to make the switch back, was when we picked up NBA Live 08, and we also tried NBA Live 09. And both of those games didn't have multi-user seasons like they did in the past. And the gameplay was still, for us, clunky in comparison to NBA 2K. And it didn't have the customization and the depth that the NBA 2K games had at that time. And so that was kind of the nail in the coffin in our household for NBA Live. So it was basically NBA 2K all the way from NBA 2K7 up until present. And before that, we spent our most time on NBA Live, starting with like NBA Live 96 all the way up till like NBA Live 06.
Well, of course, again, that PS3 360 generation was rough at times, and Live 07 on 360 is a definite low point for the series. But my latest Friday 5, I actually looked at why I feel, and I believe I've made some pretty good arguments for it, why Live flopped on the PS4 and Xbox One generation. And a lot of that came down to that lack of depth, that lack of focus on the NBA. And, I mean, gameplay is important, and that was an issue that they had, that the game wasn't as fun on the sticks as 2K, didn't feel as good. Of course, that outdated look and feel. I mean, I said it in my article, I'll still play Fallout 3. I'll still play Fallout New Vegas. I'll still play some really old games. The old GTA games from the turn of the century. Those are very dated in many aspects, but my nostalgia for them holds up. I still enjoy playing them, even though they are outdated. But for a launch title on a new generation, especially with 2K14 being as strong as it is, and you know how much I love that game now, and I could always appreciate and respect the leap it made, but looking back, just how great it was and how much I'm enjoying that, I will not have that same experience with Live 14. I can guarantee you that, Derek, that I will not be going back to Live 14 and enjoying it as I am 2K14. So that outdated look, that lack of focus on the NBA, the giving the established people in the community who had great feedback the cold shoulder when that new community manager came in, unfortunately. I touched on that in the article as well. And just having that lack of depth, that they mentioned the streamlined franchise mode. And I said it in the article that when I saw streamlined mentioned for Live 18 for the franchise mode, I thought streamlined means crap, and it did. It's you need that depth. It needs to be at least as deep as what it was on previous generations. And as I said, that there was no margin for error with Live on that generation, and we would have accepted good. We would have accepted second place to 2K, but not with the gap that there was. Good was fine. Well short, and rough and disappointing was not.
Well, I want to say something too. I know it sounds weird probably because we're both not huge fans of NBA Live 14, but I'm super excited to play that game with you or against you for some reason. So we're going to have to play NBA Live 14 on the Xbox One.
I'll play it.
on the same team, because I think it would be fun to revisit it, see if we can get a competitive game in there, whether it be against the computer or against each other, and also talk about that experience after. Talk about the shooting mechanics, the dribbling, the defense, the crazy animations that play out at times, or the uncomfortable animations, I would say. So yeah, no, we definitely got to revisit that and play it so we can talk about it on the podcast.
I mean, you know me, I'll definitely revisit these games. Look, I revisited Incredible Basketball and International Basketball 2009, so I'll definitely give Live 14 another look, especially if we're playing over Parsec. I don't think it's going to be the retro kick that 2K14 has been, though.
I have to give Andrew credit, just so our audience knows. I have to give Andrew credit. When I bring up a game to play, he's usually game. Like, he's usually ready to go. Like, if I say, hey, want to play NBA Live 2000? Hey, want to play Live 2001? What about Live 2004? Let's try something different, Live 98. Let's try that. Like, usually when I bring it up, Andrew's game to play. And I think that's kind of cool. I think Stildo is similar in that way. Stildo 33 is usually like when I asked him to play NBA Live 10, he was like, yeah, let's play it. I got him on there with me as well for like Lakers versus Celtics and whatnot. So it's definitely cool to have people to connect with who just love basketball gaming and will even revisit titles maybe they didn't like or were uncomfortable with at the time. You Stildo and whatnot, you guys will revisit those titles and try to have a good time with them.
Well, you can have a lot of fun with those games because the ones that hold up really do hold up. And look, there are some people who, especially those who like the online scene, who kind of have to go with the current game, and that's kind of unfortunate as well. I mean, that's hard to say that without sounding judgmental. And if I know how appealing the online scene can be, as I know how rough it can be, but I also know how fun, at least in theory, it can be. And you do have to go with the latest game, and sometimes the latest game is not the best one. So that is definitely is unfortunate. But when you revisit these old games and you see the appeal and you look at them with fresh eyes, sometimes they are much better, as you say, than what you remembered. But you also see ideas that would be useful for future games. So when people say, "Oh, why would you go back and play that? Why would you go back and play an old game?" I mean, some people just want to be judgmental that way. So what can you say? And it doesn't really matter what you say; they're going to still turn their nose up at it. But one, it's fun. But two, there are some ideas in old games that have fallen by the wayside that, if you brought them back, could really benefit games moving forward.
Oh, no, 100%. I mean, something as simple as taking out the suction that's in NBA 2K22, where you're just being like sucked into your defender all the time, right? Like you play a game, from the past and you feel that freedom, right? That freedom of movement on the floor and, more control and all of that stuff. And you look at, some of your favorite past basketball titles and you hope that, hey, with NBA Live does decide to come back, which I do. I still think they will at some point. But when they do decide to come back, maybe they'll, hopefully have gameplay that's free flowing and fun. And it doesn't have those issues of being sucked in everywhere all over the court and canned animations and stuff like that.
Well, we talk about bringing back ideas and also games borrowing ideas from each other, which was always the benefit of having multiple games on the market. Marseille McKenzie had a great question posted on our YouTube video of the NLSC Podcast, episode 426. And thank you so much for tuning in and sending in the question. Sending the question, do you guys think the dynamic DNA feature from Live 09 would fix 2K's problems with tendencies? That's a very interesting idea.
I mean, we brought it up on the last show. I think I responded to one of the community's responses to our mailbag question. But, like I stated, the dynamic DNA that was in the dynamic updates that were in NBA Live 09 was actually far more involved, deeper, and consistent than what we have in, say, NBA 2K22 with their sporadic updates, with their less frequent updates, with their lack of attention to detail to what's happening on the real life basketball court in the real life NBA. So no, absolutely. I think that they would obviously have to have the right minds on the project. They'd have to have a dedicated team that is actually following the trends, looking at the graphs, looking at where players are shooting their shots. Like we talked about the example of Dirk Nowitzki on the last podcast and whatnot. And they would have to have more than one or two people working on it. These people would have to know basketball and know what was going on. So I think you agree, absolutely it would help with things like tendency updates, attribute updates, more consistency and realism in that regard. I do want to, before I throw this back to you, I do also want to make a point though. Those tendencies in the video game by default have to work appropriately, right? So they, if you set somebody up to take the majority of his shots using the tendencies, say from the right elbow extended three-pointer, then that's where they should be taking those shots in the game. But from my experience, most of their shots in the game, but from my experience, the tendencies are completely hit or miss as far as like how they actually function in the game.
Oh, that's always been the thing with ratings and tendencies and player attributes in general. if the effect on the gameplay, if the AI doesn't utilize them correctly or the mechanics don't utilize them correctly, then they might as well be 1 or 99 or 57 or 83 or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Absolutely, the mechanics need to function properly. But I would be completely in favor of removing that subjectivity from ratings wherever possible. That was a goal with Dynamic DNA in NBA Live 09. They removed some of those ratings that were more subjective or powered them by the Synergy data. And of course, they're getting that data straight from Synergy Sports, so it's not even them guessing or doing the research as so much as that Synergy Sports, they're doing the research and sending that data straight through to EA, or they were processing that and going into the player tendencies and ratings, how they drove left or right, and when they posted up, and which way they went, and how they finished, and how...
Right, 2K doesn't... Right, let's be honest with you. That stuff that you're talking about right now. But remember, like, some of the biggest stars in the league, I think it was Doncic, when NBA 2K was released, had like a 0 on step back 3.
Exactly,
right?
Things like that.
He's a current player, right? And that's on release. So they have to be really solid by default when the game is released, and usually they're not with NBA 2K, especially with the classic teams. But obviously we're talking about updating current teams and doing it throughout the season, so we're talking about current. But stuff like that, like, will he post up on the right block? Will he post up on the left block? How often does he do that? Has he been shooting more from mid-range lately? We got to make sure that he's shooting more of those now because he's doing that in real life, etc. That's not stuff that's going on with NBA 2K22 right now with their updates and everything. And I mean, that could probably be easily proven by just going through the players after each update and seeing that, things were either barely touched or not touched at all.
And again, that data is coming through from Synergy, so it would be not somebody's guess. It would be an accurate representation, which way they're going, which way they are more effective finishing, and so forth. And those tendencies have been in the game, but they feel like guesses sometimes. I brought this up when I was talking about working on the 2K10 Missing Legends roster, which I am still working on, hopefully get out soon. But going through those historical players, a lot of them, not only were the ratings very generic and copy and paste, but their tendencies weren't even filled in the default rosters. So this issue has been going on for a long time. So something like that would definitely help 2K's rosters, I would think. But it's funny, 2K9, kind of, I guess, in response to what Live 09 was doing, did have that deal with Stats.com. And they brought in the 2K Insider that year, and they were talking about how the 2K Insider would pore over the databases and use their extensive knowledge of basketball to make these great ratings and also be powered by Stats.com. And yet you had all those players rated 99 overall. You brought this up to me, Derek. You pointed that out to me. I went and looked at the rosters in 2K9. Absolutely right. Some of those ratings are way off. So whatever deal they had in place was definitely inferior to what Live 09 was doing.
I mean, that's the hype train, right? That's sure. Hyping it up. And if people overall like the game, even if it's hype, no delivery on something like that, like the hoops, that data that you're discussing and everything like that, there won't be a major fuss about it. And there were a lot of people that liked NBA 2K9. It's not a weak release for NBA 2K by any means. In fact, my brothers and I really liked that game as well, and we spent a ton of time on it. But yeah, I guarantee if you dig into those ratings for NBA 2K9 and see how the players perform on the floor as a result, that it's very off in many different ways. But how many times have we seen that in the developer blogs, though, right? Where it's hype about something, or they'll talk about how they focused on accuracy in this way, and they, poured their heart and soul into ratings or something like that. And then, you get the game and it's the exact opposite. So that's they're marketing their product, they're promoting it, and luckily for them, very few people call the bluff, and it never really goes viral, so they can just kind of get away with it.
Well, I've written about it, I've talked about it on the podcast before, the lies that have been exposed, where they've talked about an improvement one year and then mentioned the next year, 2K18 to 2K19 specifically, and the removal of two-man animations, two-actor animations in the paint. They promoted that as an improvement in 2K18, and then the 2K19 blogs admitted, yeah, we kind of found some problems with the new motion system, and that was a Band-Aid fix, and the missed layups were a Band-Aid fix for being unable to stop stop.
Right. Intentionally making you miss more layups than you ever would in real life and any pro ever would in real life, just to make you miss more shots because they mechanically messed up the defense in development.
Exactly, and people.
Yeah, that's just wild.
Yeah, I mean, it's right there. You can compare the blogs and see the difference. And I highlighted passages that contradicted what they said the previous year. And I know they're always going to talk about improvements, and talking about improvements does mean to a certain extent that last year's game gets thrown under the bus. But to admit that, and that, like you say, it doesn't go viral, and people don't bring it up. And if you do bring it up, oh, you're a hater, or you're too cynical, or whatever. But the proof is there. It's right there that it's very hard to trust the developer blogs, which is unfortunate because I feel there was a time when we could trust them a little more.
I mean, 2K has just gotten so big now that it's really hard to make a positive difference in the series. Would you agree? Like, your voice, you feel like it's very small. Like, you feel like you can't really break through, and if you make a recommendation to improve the series, or you make a video, or you reach out to a developer online or something like that it's just going to fall on deaf ears, and they're just going to listen to the suits anyway, and that's the way the game is going to get made, right? And so I think that's part of the problem is a lot of this stuff we feel like we can call out, and the NLSC has been around forever. You write articles. I'm active on social media calling a lot of this stuff out, especially in the past. And it just feels like it falls on deaf ears. I will say that for a while there with NBA Live 19 and, and Connor Dugan over there and, some of their other people that were on social media at the time.
Mike Ma, yeah.
So yeah, Connor Dugan, Mike Marr, etc. It felt like they were listening to you. It felt like they would respond to you. It felt like if you had feedback, they were taking it in and telling somebody else that they knew within the company, hey, this is a good idea, or somebody recommended this change. I know that I had a few really good interactions with Connor Dugan actually during NBA Live 19 cycle when I was talking about different gameplay and, talking about, recommendations for improvement and all of that stuff. So that was a really nice touch. Unfortunately, NBA Live folded after NBA Live 19, and we haven't seen another game from them. But I wish there was a little bit more of that with NBA 2K, more authenticity, more open ears, more feeling like we could actually make a difference with recommendations. And I feel like that's not the case right now.
It does feel like it's gone very much towards the influencers and who has got a big enough audience that that they can work with and get that promotion. And I understand it. It works. 2K continues to be a juggernaut, but I do think the game suffers for not having those interactions with the smaller creators or just the average gamer on Twitter. And I know that Mike Wong, Beluba, does put out those polls and gets those responses, and they've obviously had an impact on the game as far as shot aiming and some of those other aspects that he's polled the community about. So they are taking that feedback on board. But I do think a lot of feedback gets swept under the rug because it's not what they want to hear, or even the developers want to hear it. As you say, the suits. We bring up the suits a lot, but it is an unfortunate fact of gaming that there is a business side to it, yes, but that business side sometimes influences the design in undesirable ways, and we've seen that. We've talked about that many times, but it is disheartening, especially when you're compiling wish lists, because it is absolutely vital. It's important to compile wish lists because we don't lose anything by doing so, but it sometimes feels like that it is falling on deaf ears.
Let's get to a positive, though. How about the NLSC top 10 plays of the week this week?
Cold-blooded, clutch plays. You love to see it.
No, I mean, the top 3 were game winners submitted by different people, and all 3 of those people were new to the top 10. So I thought that was really cool. Some new people getting involved, sending in highlights, etc. Love, like you stated, that it wasn't just all dunks this week. I love a dunk more than anything, but it is nice to see some different highlights in there from time to time. So 3 game winners on outside shots. Obviously, the countdown still had some amazing dunks. The Sean Kemp dunk in a Cavs uniform on the original NBA 2K submitted by at B-Ball Video Games. I'm going to toot my own horn here. My spin move into a dunk on NBA Live 2000 with Michael Jordan Right, completely posterized Jason Terry. And your two amazing dunks on NBA Live 10 using Vince Carter on the Nets when we did our makeshift classic teams 0506 Nets versus 0506 Suns matchup. We had a Giannis dunk from NBA Live 19 submitted by NBA Live BR. There's just a lot of good plays this week, good variety of games and everything. And I love seeing that new people are getting involved in the NLSC top 10.
Great variety, new submitters, great to see, absolutely. With the game winners, I feel there's something very special about, I mean, game winners are special anyway, real life or virtual hardwood. But when you do make a game winner in a basketball game, especially when you go back as far as we do with games, and we remember back in the day when jump shots were very much dice rolls, and you had a chance to win the game at the end, and you felt what was a pretty good release, but it just clanged off the rim because the CPU decided, no, you're not going to win the game, or this is going to go into overtime, or whatever, or because of the animations of the time, you couldn't get a shot off quick enough, so there'd be 0.8 of a second left, and you'd go up, and you'd almost get it off, but the buzzer would go, and you wanted to shoot it quicker, but you just couldn't because of the mechanics of the time. So when you get a game winner on the virtual hardwood, it truly is exciting.
Yeah, it was great with NBA Live 10. I also wanted to point that out. We joke around about me getting game winners hit on me, if you remember correctly, because, I got that game winner against you with Finley. And then multiple people in the community decided they were going to hit game winners on me over the next following months. And you're like, that's payback. But let's not forget that the Finley game winner wasn't the only one. I've actually hit two other game winners on you.
Thabit.
One was with Thabit, and the other was with Kevin Durant with the Thunder matchup.
That's right.
And I don't know if you remember that one. Yeah. So I've actually hit 3 game winners on you on NBA Live 10, and you've hit 0 on me. So you're the one who actually has to get me back at this point. Not other people in the community.
This is true. This is true that I've been enjoying revenge by proxy, which is not really revenge, I will admit. But I mean, when you lose that way, it's kind of a bummer, but at the same time, it's such a spectacular moment that, you know what, it was good competition. With that Thabit game winner as well, that was also me really screwing up and going for a 3 with Diao when I should have just taken more time off the clock and just driven it in and got a better shot or a mid-range shot. I don't know why I did the modern game of flipping it back to him for that open 3 at the top with too much time left on the clock. But you made me pay, and that's the thing. I had my opportunities and I blew it, and you had your opportunities and you delivered. With my 2K14 MyCAREER, I've hit 3 game winners, 2 in the regular season in year 2, and then in the year 3, the 2016 All-Star game, and it felt satisfying every time. And you can see some of those in the top. Actually, I think they're all in the top 10 over the past few months. But yeah, it's just so special. And again, that Finley 3, how can you be mad about that? That is such a spectacular moment. The net exploding, the commentary acknowledging it. And that's another thing that over the years has gotten better, that the commentary actually acknowledges a clutch situation. Like in the early days, the sort of turn of the century games sounds so weird to say, but it's true. But you hit that game-winning shot, and the commentary is still kind of generic, and it's like, oh, and he hits the shot. Like, yes, but that was a game winner. You needed to acknowledge that. But the commentary, when you have that presentation and the replays, and the commentary just acknowledges that game winner on top of actually making it, whether it's against another user, another gamer, or against a CPU, is just so satisfying. And those ones in the top 10 this week, and one actually being a playoff game with the Celtics, I thought was very special.
Yeah, it was a Jason Tatum game winner against the Bucks. They really played them. And him hitting a 3 at the buzzer, forcing a game 7. So no, I thought it was a really good top 10. We will keep the community posted if Andrew hits any game winners on me, because I know he's itching to. And yes, he has been living through other people's game winners on me. I will say this, vicariously. I've been, and it's still to 33, and I have been playing our NBA 2K 19, 94, 95 MyLEAGUE, and we had an amazing game today. It's the second time that I played against the Suns with my Supersonics, and the first time I played the Suns, I blew him out. I think I won by 20. But he promised that the next time he used them, that he was going to use them smarter, better, and compete more. And he did. I ended up. I'm not going to give it away. It came down to the final shot. The game was decided only by 2 points. And he did one hell of a job using them. This time, he absolutely destroyed me with Danny Manning, hit a bunch of threes with Dan Marley, etc., and almost used Barkley as a decoy out there, and was more setting people up using Barkley and everything. But yeah, really good game. And you know what? Screw it. I'll say who won. I ended up winning the game. Bill Cartwright actually hit the last shot for me. So I actually threw an alley-oop. It was supposed to go to Kemp. It went to Cartwright. Cartwright tipped it in. And that put me up by 2, 101-99. And he wasn't able to convert on the next possession with only a few seconds left. So I'm still undefeated with the Supersonics, so that's a good thing.
I was going to say, when you talk about a game-winning bucket with Cartwright, I mean, surely it's not going to be a jumper. I mentioned not being able to get a shot off in the older games because of the animation. A realistic Cartwright animation takes a long time to play out with his jumper or a free throw. He had a very distinct, shall we say, style of shooting the ball. But yes, a tip in makes sense. That's a bit quicker than his big wind up of a jump shot.
Yeah, no, I actually hit a clutch free throw with him too in the fourth quarter with that really crazy long wind up of his, and I felt pretty good about that. But what was really cool was watching Stildo play using that team and use them entirely different than he did the first time he played me. And he went through with his promise. He played a lot better with them this time. He used his pieces better. He did better with the matchups, etc. So, shout out to him for turning it around with the Suns and making a great game of it.
Well, that's the great thing about how you're handling the season, where you're both each other's opponents every game, and you get to play the multiple games with some of those opponents. That you can make those adjustments as those teams would in reality.
Yeah, exactly. It's been really fun using a team against each other for the second time. Like, he has the Cavs coming up, where he's going to be using them. And the first time I played him with him using the Cavs, I won by like 40. And he is telling me, I'm going to use that team better the next time. I'm going to be able to compete better. And, I understand that team a little bit more. So I'm anxious to play him with him using the Cavs again, because I think that he's going to make a better game of it.
I mean, I'm surprised to hear that Stildo will be talking trash. That's not like him at all. You did tantalize me with a possible Weber highlight. We were connected after the game, and you were trying to quickly find it. You weren't able to find it at the time, but I'm interested to see that jump stop you had with Weber, if you can find that.
So I lost the game, actually. I was up the majority of the game. I was the Bullets, he was the Magic. And I was like, all right, I'm going to give him his fourth loss here. And then he put Shaq on Weber and just double-teamed Weber for the full fourth quarter, and I couldn't get offense going with anybody else. So I ended up losing that game and dropping it at the end. But there's a play in that game where I get Weber in kind of like the mid-post, I would say, and face up. And I do a jump stop and finish after the jump stop on the opposite side of the basket with a dunk. And it just looks incredibly smooth, incredibly Weber-like, to be completely honest with you. And it's just really cool to see that animation play out after a jump stop in NBA 2K19. I actually was curious about how you felt about this playing NBA 2K19 in some of the newer games. One advantage that I have with over Stildo as far as making great highlights is I'm better, and him and I have talked about this numerous times, and he's trying to get better at it. I'm better at using momentum moves and, exploding off of like a first step and whatnot, and using the buttons correctly or the joystick correctly in order to explode to the hoop and do like a great dunk or an acrobatic layup and stuff like that. He'll either let off the turbo accidentally, or he'll have the turbo on, but he'll take off from the wrong point, or he won't get that explosion off of his first step. Do you feel that you struggle with that at all with the newer 2Ks, as far as like leaning into your move and exploding, or doing those momentum moves to give you that great highlight?
I found that in 2K21 and 2K22, certainly. I think that's something that I don't like about the feel of either of those games, on next gen especially. But 2K19, I remember doing pretty much what I wanted. I certainly, and still has talked about getting better about this as well, and you've been giving him some tips, I know, about that effective right stick usage. Because for a long time, I kind of neglected the right stick as a shooting control. I would definitely go to the button a lot. But being able to choose which side you finish on and to be able to do those advanced moves, to put up a floater with ease whenever you want, it's so important to use those advanced finishing moves.
Oh, no, 100%. I love the ability to have more control over what you do at the rim with those stick moves, with the right stick control. And I have to give Stildo credit because him and I talk about it, what we can improve on and what will make the games more competitive and stuff like that. And the two things that we've talked about recently are the momentum moves and the ability to use the stick around the basket. So like say driving baseline, pushing the stick towards the out of bounds, which will allow you to do like a reverse layup to avoid the defense. So we had just talked about that before we had played the last game. And we went into scrimmage as well, and we executed a few moves, and I showed him a couple things. And in the next game, in the Suns game versus Supersonics, he had his biggest dunk of the season, and it was with Charles Barkley because he utilized his momentum correctly and timed his dunk right. And he had two reverse layups in the game where he drove baseline and pushed the joystick towards the out of bounds and got two sweet reverse layups. And I think those are the first two reverse layups I've seen him do all season. So he definitely cares about getting better at the game, and it's showing.
It's that competitive drive, no doubt. Before I give a few updates on my 2K14 MyCAREER and the stories that are being woven there, obviously, you've been playing many games into the season now. The standings are taking shape with the teams that you're controlling and whatnot. What stories are taking shape in that season as far as the standings and possible injuries and whatnot? What's that narrative that's emerging as you play through the season?
Well, one thing that we wanted to do is we actually turned injuries off. And the reason why we turned this off is because we are playing a season where we want to see what happened if the teams were at full strength. Sure. For the whole season. And we also don't want to get to a point where a big game is coming up and let's say it's Knicks versus Magic and he finds out that, and then I find out that Ewing's out and another key player on the Knicks is out, and then that game just becomes a joke, right? So that's the reason why injuries are off. As far as things that are taking place, the Bulls actually had started out the season incredibly weak. We're not letting Jordan come back until the end of the season like in real life. But they were out of the playoff race for the first 5 or so games, let's say 5 to 8 games. And then all of a sudden they're on a winning streak and they propelled to, I think, number 5 or 4 in the East. So that's good for them. And that bodes well for them if they can keep that standing. Because if you remember, if I remember correctly, in 94-95, the Bulls finished 5th.
Yes, I think so, yeah.
So that's where they are, I think, right now. So it's very realistic. And I know that Stildo, him and I have talked about it, he's trying to avoid them at all cost. He doesn't want to play them in the first round and whatnot. So we'll see what happens. Right now, Ken is, I think, second. So Stildo is second in the East, and he would play the Pacers in the first round. So that would be really interesting because that Pacers team is incredibly fun to use with Smits and Miller and whatnot. And if the playoffs started today, I would play the Warriors in the first round. So that's Tim Hardaway and Sprewell and Chris Mullin. So he loves using that team. So he's really hoping that stays. He's hoping that he can play me using the Warriors in the first round. Nothing major surprise wise is as far as teams being out of playoff position. It's very similar right now actually to real life. And I think that's because before this roster was released, there was a lot of testing, right, in a season to make sure that teams were winning as much as they should or as much as they did in real life. So it's really cool looking at it right now, looking at the standings, looking at who we may be playing in the playoffs and all that stuff. And we're also anticipating the award races coming up.
Now that's awesome how it's actually reflecting real life to some extent, and that is the fun, is it not, of playing through a season and looking at the leaders and looking at the standings and just seeing how that virtual reality, that virtual NBA is taking shape, and for it to be such a detailed retro roster mod and for it to reflect reality that way is, I have to imagine that's just enhancing that experience for you even more. And you're already having a blast on the sticks, obviously, but for it to be playing out that way and bringing back those memories of that season and kind of reflecting it to a certain extent, yeah, that's just got to be so much fun.
Well, I want to point something out, too, for anybody who's on the fence about Parsec, any of our listeners. If there was ever any doubt that it's fair when you play on Parsec when both people have a decent connection, where I'm 13 games into my season with the Supersonics, and in the same season, he's 14 games in with the Magic. And remember, he's hosting every single game. I'm connecting to him. And my 3-point percentage is higher than his on the season. I'm actually shooting as a team 39% from three. My field goal percentage is also slightly higher than his. I think I'm shooting around 54 or 55% overall from the field. And when I'm using teams against him, his opponent 3-point percentage, I'm also higher with other teams as well. So that's why I never mind running these tournaments with people as long as they have good Wi-Fi or a decent internet connection in general, is because really Parsec works so well that it feels like either no lag or not enough lag where it would make a huge difference in the competition. Right. So we're playing on user timing. We're playing on superstar shooting on NBA 2K19. That has not been altered. So the fact that I'm shooting almost 40% from three with my team through all of these games and shooting around close to 55% from the floor, that speaks very well to Parsec.
And this is, of course, pre-Hersey Hawkins, the gunner from 3-point range, because you've got Kendall Gill starting at shooting guard.
Right. I think I overachieve a little bit with Kendall Gill. I think he's averaging 16 to 18 points a game right now on the season, but he's shooting very efficiently. I pick my spots pretty well with him, and I go one-on-one a lot with him as well. But yeah, I still have some shooters though. I have Detlef Schrempf, I have Sam Perkins. Schrempf shot about 50% from three that season. Nate McMillan can shoot it. Gary Payton can shoot it. So I definitely still, Sharunas Marcelonis is on that team. So I definitely still have some decent shooters, but if there was ever any question, if I was at like a disadvantage as far as like shooting the ball or anything like that, because I'm not hosting on Parsec, that can kind of be thrown out the window.
Oh yeah, when it comes to Parsec, if there are any issues, it's definitely on the person that's having the issues. I will put my hand up and admit that quite readily. Basically, it's my connection.
Right. Well, the thing is that I haven't hosted one game this season, and when I do host other games and Stildo connects with me, his connection is fantastic as well. So I just think it really depends on both people's connection being at least decent in order for the competition aspect to feel fair. But definitely these games and this season has motivated me even more to start the next NLSC tournament. So I need to do that at some point soon. I think that's going to be on Street Volume 2, and I'd love for you to play in it.
Yeah, I'll definitely give it a go. I was going to ask whether it was going to be Street or Lakers versus Celtics, because we were discussing both.
Oh, it's tempting on Lakers versus Celtics, isn't it?
With X-Patter, I mean, it just plays so well.
It plays amazing. And the other thing, too, is the game is set up perfectly for a tournament. There's 8 teams in the game, right? So, it's okay, so we know for a fact that it would be an 8-person tournament. That would be really easy to set up and get through, and it would be a lot of fun. So, who knows? Maybe I'll do Lakers versus Celtics first. I haven't decided. But enough about my NBA 2K19 season with Stildo, which has been an absolute blast. Let's give the people what they want. Andrew's NBA 2K14 MyCAREER update.
Well, I'm in the playoffs now, which is kind of amazing that at the end of March I was talking about just finishing up year 2, and it's only been a couple of months, and I've just sped through year 3. Had some time during this month being under the weather, playing, just chilling out, playing some games, but I got through year 3 very quickly, having a blast with it, obviously. Carmelo Anthony You know last week, Derek, how I said that our team was healthy and that was great?
Now he's hurt.
The very next game I played after we recorded, he went down with a hyperextended knee. Was out for a couple of weeks, which took him through the end of the season. This allowed Terry Hansen to get even more touches, of course, and I also was able to up my scoring in the last few weeks of the season as well. Finished 77-5, so a new record there. As I said last week, the fifth loss came to the Pistons and Jackson Ellis. Bit of a bummer there, but nevertheless, it was also from a narrative standpoint, it was kind of appropriate. So entered the playoffs with the top seed, obviously, and I led the league in all the categories and got MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, etc. All the usual my player sweeping of the awards and domination. But Terry Hansen was robbed, and I will stand by this. Pat Clemens of the Bucks got Rookie of the Year. Admittedly, he was leading the All-Rookies in assists and steals, 5.7 assists and a steal per game. Not eye-popping numbers, but, he did lead the league in that category. Terry Hansen, obviously on the best team in the league and leading All-Rookies in scoring. All-Rookie first team, which was nice, but he was robbed. But the great thing about it is that in the playoffs, it's almost like he's playing with some anger over it because he's been much more aggressive. He's second on the team in scoring. Melo returned to the lineup in Game 2 of the first round, only to go down with a sprained knee. And I'm going to say it's the same. It doesn't say whether it's the same knee, but I'm going to say it is because it, again, makes sense with the story. Went down in Game 1 of the second round against the Bobcats, who have improved after the acquisition of Rondo in the offseason. So Hansen is stepping it up. He's just playing with this aggressiveness that really, it's almost like he's upset that he lost Rookie of the Year. So it's kind of, again, feeding into that fantasy, that story that's taking shape on the virtual hardwood. Really enjoying that. And have swept through the playoffs so far, but in the second round, I'm sure probably by next week, by the next episode, I will have gotten through to at least the off-season of Year 4. So that'll be, the off-season between Year 3 and Year 4, I should say. But that's been a lot of fun. But as far as the story that's taking shape elsewhere, Derek, the top-seeded Blazers, who the Lakers couldn't catch during the regular season, were bounced in 7 games by the 8th-seeded Nuggets, who are the defending Western Conference champions, but dropped off after they lost Nate Robinson to the Heat. So
damn Nuggets, just like the Supersonics.
Yeah,
always upsetting. Always upsetting the top seed.
Absolutely. So they knocked off the Blazers. Second year in a row that the Blazers have lost in the first round after making the finals in 2014. In my rookie season, when I defeated them for my first championship with the 76ers, of course. And so that was interesting there. And the Lakers they're undefeated as well. They're the only other undefeated team, but Kobe Bryant has just gone down with an Achilles injury, funnily enough. So it's LeBron, and Jordan Farmar, of all players, has been playing really well for them and like a star in some of those games. In games where Kobe and LeBron have been kind of quiet, it's been Farmar and not Gasol that's stepped up big time. So they're still undefeated. They're looking like they're going to be the team coming out of the West. And in the East, the Brooklyn Nets with Dirk, of course, and Sean Marion, who they acquired in the offseason. They were up 2-0 on the Cavs, and the Cavs came storming back and went to win the next 4 in a row to advance. The Bulls are in the second round despite losing Jimmy Butler to an injury. So there's all these stories that are going on around this virtual NBA beyond my player. So it's been really fun to keep track of not just the league leaders, but really look at the standings and looking at these other series and how there's been these upsets and other teams emerging and who's going to be that, who's going to come out of the West, because obviously I'm looking to come out of the East, and who's going to be scoring off against. With the Blazers out, looks like it's going to be the Lakers, and I think Lakers versus 76ers will be a pretty fun finals, especially if Kobe makes it back in time. It looks like he's only going to miss a couple of weeks, so that might be enough that he's enough time that he's back by the finals. So LeBron and Kobe together on the Lakers in the finals against myself and the 76ers, me and Terry Hansen. That could be very exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we got to go back to the Terry Hansen thing. How did he lose Rookie of the Year to a guy with a baseball name?
I know.
Pat Clemens.
I know.
I mean, that guy doesn't sound like he even belongs on a basketball court. That's disappointing. What's the point differential between Terry Hansen? It's for scoring average between Terry Hansen and Pat Clemens.
I think Clemens was averaging about 16, Hansen 18.7 in the regular season.
Okay. All right. So not a huge difference. What about rebounds?
Well, that's the thing that Hansen, despite being a 6'7" swingman, was only averaging about 2.5 rebounds per game. To the 6-foot Clemens averaging just around 3 or a little over 3 rebounds. So the shorter player was out rebounding him. This is kind of my fault for averaging a triple double. I'm kind of taking
right.
stats.
This is kind of your fault for stat hogging.
Yeah.
Right. I totally understand that, but I see where your point is. What your point is, though, if you go 77-5. And your rookie is playing big minutes and he's putting up almost 20 points per game, he should basically be a shoo-in.
I think so.
Rookie of the year. Yeah, I agree with that. See, like if that happened in real life, let's say you had a team and the rookie was playing big minutes and that team won 70-plus games, and that rookie also led all rookies in scoring, what are the odds that rookie wouldn't get rookie of the year? It's like 0. Like there's like a 0% chance they wouldn't get it. So I definitely agree with you there. And yeah, the storylines that you were talking about, I mean, that's what you love. And it's really cool, like with the layout in that game and the way they do updates in the social media and everything. It must be really cool to look at it every time you open up the game.
Oh, it is. After every game, I'm looking through the virtual NBA.com and looking at the headlines and the leaders and the brackets and seeing how things are going. I really paid attention to that this year. And I love how there's that combination of real NBA history and the alternate history, the alternate reality that's been created by playing 3 years into my career, that it's combining to tell this story. Really, and it's telling the story through basketball, through gameplay, through results, not through cutscenes and predetermined scenarios. There are a couple of them in the rookie year because they were introducing the story, of course, but now it's mostly between the results, players challenging me on social media. It's kind of funny when a player says, there's no, at Andrew NLSC, because my Twitter handle in the game is the same as in real life, says, there's no way you're going to be able to drop a points, assist, double-double on us in this game. And I'm like, I'm averaging a triple-double. I think I'm going to be fine. Or something like, there's no way you can get 2 dunks against us. I'm like, yeah, I think I will in the first quarter. So it is funny, some of the challenges they throw out. But it does add, that's the flavor content that I enjoy, that NBA flavor content that I enjoy about my career. But the way the stories come together, and like I said, the Lakers and the 76ers having clashed in the finals in real life multiple times, it just adds to that, being the history buff that that I am, and the NBA fan that I am. To combine that with the virtual history just makes it so much more fun.
Yeah, you don't have Moses Malone, but I mean, you'll do fine.
I've got Nerlens Noel. Unfortunately, I don't have Spencer Hawes. Unfortunately, I don't have Spencer Hawes. But look, he's doing pretty well with the Cavs. So I think I might be able to. Might even end up facing Hawes in the conference finals. So that'll be
there you go. Your old friend.
Another story, another subplot, and the subplots are such a big part of real basketball as well, are they not? I mean, we talk about the media narratives and whatnot get very exhausting, and the agendas are being pushed and whatnot. But if you look back at the eras that we loved, the rivalries between the Bulls and the Knicks and their history, and some of the players that didn't like each other or were very competitive with one another, and who faced whom last year, and who was looking for revenge as they meet in the playoffs again, that kind of stuff. Those are the storylines and the subplots that I love about sports and basketball specifically.
Yeah, and 2K14 does a really good job of keeping the activity going and keeping things interesting and everything like that. And just so people know, for the top 10, Andrew submitted a highlight that is probably going to make it into either this next coming week or the week after. And it's a really cool dunk where he actually grabs one side of the rim, which is illegal, but they allow it in the video game. Yeah. Grabs one side of the rim and then throws it down on the opposite side. And I think it's a really cool animation. It's completely illegal and wouldn't be allowed during.
It's street ball. It's a street ball move, yeah.
It's a street ball move that they allow in the video games because it's cool. You can do it in the newer 2Ks as well. The animation is still there. But definitely looked cool, and you put real audio to it, and I think that's going to be a really good future top 10 highlight.
No, I do keep sending you the highlights. It's after a big game with some pretty cool clips, I'm like, okay, whether this makes it into the top 10 or not, Derek's going to want to see this.
100%. And people love when you share those on Twitter, too, so it's nice to see that you're doing a little bit more of that.
Yes, I'm. By all means, follow me at Andrew NLSC on Twitter to get some of those updates, and of course, I will continue to provide updates both through the Monday tip-off, already drafting an article to talk about Year 3. It's not written yet because I'm still indeed writing the results in the game, but stay tuned for that, and of course on the podcast as well, and your 2K19 with Stildo. We'll continue to give updates on those.
Right, and to our listeners, please go on to the NLSC YouTube consistently and look at the videos that are being uploaded, whether it's the podcast or the NLSC Top 10 or like the NBA Live 98 gameplay video that Andrew and I just played, NBA Live 2004. There's a bunch of cool videos that are going up, shining light on some of these older games and, putting them in a really positive light as well. Just some great highlights, feed your nostalgia. Let's put it that way, and make sure that you're checking out the NLSC YouTube because I'm having a lot of fun putting those YouTube videos together, and there definitely has been increased traffic on the channel, but I feel like there should be even more eyes on it.
Absolutely. If you're hungry for nostalgia, we've got quite the buffet, shall we say.
100%. And Andrew and I have been connecting actually quite a bit lately, and it's been a lot of fun. Still crazy that we can even do that. Like, I'm still floored by us being able to connect like we did last night on NBA Live 2004 and playing NBA Live 98 and just it working that well and us just being able to have a fun experience. Like, one of my favorite things is playing like NBA Live 2004 with you, and I can tell that it's working good enough because you're doing the triple threat stuff with Jordan. Like, I see you pawn the ball, put it behind your back. I see you go into a spin move, or I see you, do a spin move into a jump stop for a dunk. And I'm like, I know Andrew's having a good time because it's working good enough. And I still can't believe we can even do this.
And it's not going to stop anytime soon.
No, absolutely not.
But that has actually brought us to the end of this week's episode. As always, we thank you for tuning in. The show comes out every Sunday on the NLSC, which is nba-live.com, of course. You can also find us on all the major podcatching apps and platforms. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podcast Addict are the ones that I name each and every week, but we are on other ones as well. On those platforms, search for NLSC Podcast, look for our logo, and that will be us. And of course, as Derek mentioned before, you can also tune into the show on our YouTube channel. And we also want to connect with you on social media. So, Derek, I'm going to make like Bill Walton and throw the ball over to you, like you're Larry Bird, so that you can promote your socials.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll finish it with a layup just like Larry did in real life. You can connect with me on Twitter at D4384 or at D43G or both. That would be even better. I'm on YouTube, D43, and I'm also on the NLSC, D43, and I'm a team member over there. And last thing I want to say is we will be doing a mailbag on the next episode of the NLSC podcast. We're just waiting for more answers to roll in to the question.
Keep them coming and hit us up on social media with your answers. I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. The NLSC is on Twitter and Facebook at the NLSC. We are NLSC Basketball on Instagram. Our aforementioned YouTube channel is youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep it locked to the NLSC itself, nba-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. But yes, that's all for this week. So thank you once again for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.